Monster, What Really Happened to This Horror Movie? The What Really Happened to This Horror Movie looks at the true story behind the 2003 film Monster, starring Charlize Theron. When we think of monsters on this channel, most of the time it's from a fictional, mythical, or legendary monster like the Mummy, Wolfman, Dracula, or Frankenstein's monster. On this specific show, however, a monster can take on a whole new meaning. I joke that half of these episodes will be about reportedly true possessions, and while that will probably hold fast, there is another type of monster we have discussed a few times. The guy that loosely inspired the Scream killings, Henry from Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, and today's subject Aileen Wuornos. The movie made about her is literally called Monster and put director Patty Jenkins and star Charlize Theron, at least in terms of her being seen as an A-list actor who can actually act, on the map. It's a straightforward telling of a murderer that of course adds nuance and even audience empathy to the cinematic version. It has the vaunted, based on a true story moniker slapped onto it, but how accurate is the tale of the tape versus the real events? Be careful who you pick up hitchhiking as we find out what really happened to Monster. Relative unknown Patty Jenkins had only 2 short films to her name when she decided to write a screenplay based on Aileen Wuornos, who was one of the most notorious female serial killers of the 20th century. She wrote the script in only 7 weeks and then was on the hunt for who could play her characters. Even though the movie came out after Wuornos was executed, Jenkins was able to speak with her and was even given access to hundreds of letters. This was a huge get for the production and writing, as Wuornos was usually very uncooperative. To play this powerful character, Jenkins had a few options in mind. She screen-tested Kate Winslet, Heather Graham, Brittany Murphy, and Kate Beckinsale. Reese Witherspoon made her intentions known that she wanted to play the role, but the decision came down to a fateful late-night movie that was playing when Jenkins woke up. Seeing Charlize Theron's performance in The Devil's Advocate sealed the deal for Jenkins, and Theron was taken aback but very excited to play the part. She would even founded Denver and Delilah Films to help produce the movie. This would pay off in spades, as the movie was made for $1.5 million and brought back a whopping $64 million at the box office. Mix that in with rave reviews and Oscar gold for Charlize, and I'd say that was a great decision. While this movie is horrifying, Theron has other traditional horror movies to her name, like the previously mentioned Devil's Advocate, The Astronaut's Wife, and her first movie was one of those damned straight-to-video Children of the Corn sequels. Oh, and Prometheus. For the role of Wuornos's girlfriend and unwitting pawn, Kate Hudson was originally offered the role but turned it down. Cristina Ricci was cast, and she had already done a good job shedding her child acting perception with movies like Buffalo 66, The Opposite of Sex, and Prozac Nation, but this movie showed her ability to act. It didn't garner the same awards as Theron, but Roger Ebert called it brilliant. Other horror under her belt include Sleepy Hollow, Bless the Child, Cursed, and Afterlife. Of course, she is also an icon as Wednesday Addams in her 2 live-action portrayals. The rest of the cast is no slouch either, with Bruce Dern, Lee Tajison, Scott Wilson, and Pruitt Taylor Vince in smaller roles. Heck, we even get none other than Kane Hodder as an undercover agent. It was released on Christmas Eve in 2003 and, as stated, killed it for audiences and critics alike. The movie opens with Aileen narrating about her early life and her dreams. On the screen we see a far less positive portrayal of Aileen's troubled home and school life, followed by prostitution at a young age. It cuts to present-day Aileen, who has a few dollars in one hand and a gun in the other, thinking of ending it all. She ends up in a gay club to get a beer and meets Selby Wall. She says she has a pressure washing business but is visibly offended by Selby's companionship and makes her pay for their booze. They end up having a great time together and close the place down. Aileen has nowhere to go and ends up staying at Selby's house before she ruses out in the morning when Selby's family almost catches them. Aileen agrees to meet up with Selby at the Moonlight later that day. The movie's goal is to show just before Aileen went on her killing spree all the way up to her capture and incarceration, but it does have hints of what happened to her beforehand. Aileen was born in Michigan in 1956 but never met her father, who was put in jail for life and hung himself while there. Aileen and her brother Keith were abandoned and left with their grandparents, who unfortunately were both alcoholics and had other problems as well.